I could see how, to like an outsider, like a band singing about what it's like to be in a band could probably be like a little alienating or maybe like hard to relate to, but it's the life I was living at the time. So I gave myself license to do so. And the song Upon Which to Piss is just kind of about my experience navigating the music industry during, what we now look at as like the indie rock boom years, and there's this like this system of, these so-called indie record labels, certain, online music publications. There's these different sorts of festivals, music conferences, etc. And, they're writing books about this time period now. But that song was like my on the ground reporting on what it was like for me going through that. And once again, I was a little bit of a house divided amongst itself because on the one hand, I was getting what I wanted. Like I was like kind of a big shot, sort of like in this little world, in this little corner of the music business. Like I was getting to do what I'd hoped, which is, go travel around and do all the concerts. And pretty soon we're going to make another album, and that's all great. And I'm running around America with my boys, and like we're partying and getting drunk and high and like doing and rocking the house every night and making a big noise with the amplifiers, and that's all great. But at the same time, there was shit about doing it that was just like whack. Like I didn't really think it was that awesome to like go to South by Southwest and like be like glad handing people or like, sucking up to people, kissing people's ass. Like that's not really my thing. No, too much fun, getting drunk and sad, singing I'm at the end of my rope, and I feel like swinging. I didn't like going on the internet and seeing people ragging on me and saying that Titus Andronicus was whack. And this was, in the early days of, internet trolling and stuff. And this is why, for the opening spoken part of the song, I had my friend Cassie Ramone, who we remember from the great band Vivian Girls. She reads the opening speech, which is taken from Jefferson Davis's memoir. Jefferson Davis was the president of the so-called Confederate States of America, which was the United States' opponent in the Civil War. And Cassie reads, the audience was large and brilliant. Upon my weary heart were showered flowers, smiles, and plaudits. But beyond them I saw thorns and troubles innumerable. So that to me, like, kind of, not saying Jefferson Davis did the right thing by leading that Confederacy, but I could kind of relate in a way to what he was saying. Like, he had been made the president of this fledgling nation, and everybody's cheering for him and saying, like, you're the greatest guy, like, you're about to be like our big hero. But he knows, like, I'm actually like in pretty deep shit now as I embark on this thing that I'm undertaking. So that was kind of where my head was at. Like, it's awesome that everybody's clapping for me and telling me I'm the man, but at the same time, like, it's like you might have been, better to be a little more careful about what you wish for, because I'm dealing with all this other bullshit. And Cassie Ramone and the Vivian Girls were at the time, the recipients of a lot of like really toxic attention on the internet, and particularly in the comments section of a website called Brooklyn Vegan that was very popular at the time. And people in the comments section would say terrible, vicious, misogynistic things about Vivian Girls, which was a fantastic band that like made a bunch of great songs and records. And my friend, besides, so like I was I was pissed off and offended on their behalf. And I felt like Cassie, like I knew, and we had talked about it, like she could understand this whole thing of like, we wanted, to pursue the music thing. And in a way, our careers were like going great. But at the same time, it came with a lot of unwanted stuff that we never asked for.
It wasn't a flattering photograph, and people saw it all over town, hanging up in the wall above the urinal. He's a man with a notepad, say, oh, that's funny, but they drink too much. And don't be surprised if they come back to nothing at all. And we were talking about giving up, we were talking about lying down, we were talking about tying up. Wasn't it supposed to be something else?
A Pot in Which to Piss is kind of the weird, musically, it's like kind of the most out there song on the record. Like it goes in a lot of weird directions and takes little unexpected detours in kind of like that sort of Happiness is a Warm Gun, Paranoid Android, Bohemian Rhapsody kind of way. And the way that happened was that getting towards the end of the writing process for the record, I realized like I've got like maybe 5 or 6 like riffs or musical ideas that I like that are kind of homeless right now. They're kind of orphan ideas. So why don't I just put them all in the same key of E major and kind of like see what sort of wild madcap journey I can put together for the listener. So that's exactly what I did. So there's kind of like a ballady sort of like swirling, like shoegaze kind of part. There's like a kind of more like Clash, kind of skronky part. There's like a doo-wop, like a, Spectre, like girl group kind of wordless part. There's like a rock and roll, like a boogie woogie part. There's just a lot going on in an album that kind of like makes a point of doing stuff like that and taking these twists and turns. This was sort of like the ultimate expression of that kind of idea as far as like a musical idea goes. So it's appropriate then, I guess, that it's like right smack in the middle of the record.
I've been called out, cuckolded, castrated, but I survived. I am covered in urine and excrement, but I'm alive. And there's a white flag in my pocket, never to be unfurled.
So Craig Finn, he was another one of these guys who was nice enough to let me visit him with my little trusty 4-track cassette recorder, and I asked him to read a poem from Walt Whitman, Vigil Strange on the Field I Kept, I believe it's called, which is from the perspective of a soldier during the Civil War who I guess, has this, he's like in love with this other guy, this other soldier, and that guy gets killed in battle, and he just has this, this moment of burying his lover on the battlefield, and it's a very powerful piece of poetry. And Craig Finn is like kind of like a Walt Whitman figure to me, because he's a New York City guy. I mean, he's from Minneapolis originally, but, he's working out of New York and singing about New York stuff. And he has like an incredible faculty for poetry and for using words to, really beautiful ends. But at the same time, he's kind of like a jolly, saucy guy. He's like a very gregarious, big-hearted sort of person. So Walt Whitman, is kind of like the Civil War poet. Like, he was not a soldier in it, but he was a nurse. So if you're going to do a Civil War album and you're going to have these spoken interludes, Walt Whitman is the guy that you're going to want to utilize. And Craig Finn is, was as close to Walt Whitman as I had in my Rolodex at the time. So he was nice enough to read that. It was backstage at a concert in New Jersey when the first time that Titus Andronicus opened for the Hold Steady. And he just banged it out backstage in 1 or 2 takes. And it's one of, many times over the years that he was there for me when I needed him. And, he's a good man. And has always kind of looked out for me as sort of like an older guy in the scene that's, trying to do a version of what he did. So big salute to him as well.
And there and then, and bathed by the rising sun, my son in his grave, in his rude dark grave I deposited, ending my vigil strange with that, vigil of night and battlefield dim, vigil for boy of responding kisses, never again on earth responding. Vigil for comrades swiftly slain, vigil I never forget. How as day brightened, I rose from the chill ground and folded my soldier well in his blanket and buried him where he fell.